Great. Hello, everyone. Today, we are going to talk about another important topic in leadership and how communication around it is shaping leadership in organizations. And the topic for today is unconscious karma, how unprocessed emotions get passed down in leadership. And to start with, let us talk about the invisible inheritance, the emotional inheritance that nobody talks about in corporates. We say you inherit the eye color. We've inherited a lot of qualities, physical qualities from our parents. But you know what? We do also inherit emotional patterns. And this particular emotional inheritance, nobody wants to talk in corporate boardrooms. But the thing is, we should all start talking about it because it is shaping the way we are leading our teams, building cultures, and succeeding in organizations. So now we all know that traumas run in families, right? So similarly, there's emotional residues that run in organizations. Let me take you back to a meeting I was once a part of. We were launching a high stakes project. Everything looked perfect on the paper. Talented team, clear goals. We even got budget approvals. But you know what? The air in the room was pretty tensed. No one said anything, but you could feel the fear of failure and the hesitation for people to speak up in that meeting. And that undercurrent of that meeting said, hey, you don't have to rock the boat. It was like we were all carrying the ghosts of our past leadership teams, old breakdowns, project failures, punishment of taking risks, and no one remembered where it all began or the data behind it. But everyone felt it. And that, my friends, is unconscious karma. It is that emotional energy that lingers long after the incident is over. People will forget the incident, people will forget the data as to how many times it has happened, but people will not forget how it made them feel. It's when a new manager inherits a burnout of the team. It's when employee avoids giving feedback because their last boss shut them down when they tried giving it to them. So what happens is that all of this gets rippled and then it creates a new culture. An unconscious karma is a leadership legacy you don't intend to pass on, but you know what? You do unconsciously. And that's exactly what we are going to talk today. And how does it all manifest the unconscious karma? It shows in your tone, it shows up in your meetings, in the silences that you are having, in the way people feel around you. And most leaders don't even realize that they're actually carrying a baggage with them, but their teams will feel it. Because why this has happened is that no one taught us that emotions are like assets, they compound. So when you leave it unprocessed, they just don't disappear. They start compounding, they start rippling through teams, through culture, and even into the next generation of leaders. So before we fix our any other KPIs like timelines and numbers and strategies and workflows, we need to ask ourselves, what is the leadership energy that we are passing down? So in the next segment, I'll show you exactly how an emotional ripple spreads and why a leader should be paying attention to it. Now, let's get into a concept called as leadership energy loop. So, when you may leave the room, but you should understand that your energy doesn't leave the room. Now, let's get deeper to understand what it means. Remember the meeting that I discussed just some time back? That tension in the air, that unspoken hesitation, lot of things which was running, the undercurrent which was passing. we might just brush off thinking that, hey, it was just a bad day. But science tells us something very different, that emotions are contagious. We catch emotions like how we catch cold, not metamorphically, but quite literally. And we know that neuroscience talks about mirror neurons. These are the super specialized cells in your brain that are constantly scanning and mirroring that emotional states of others, especially the most emotionally dominant person in the room. And guess who it is? It is you as the leader. And in a team setting, guess who builds the most emotional system in the room? It's the leader. If you walk in stressed, you will notice that people will also observe the stress, any state that you walk in. And this is called the emotional contagion. It is not a spiritual idea or some fluff that we are talking here. It is a high performing biology. And this is all hardwired in our nervous system. There's also a theory called as polyvagal theory by Dr. Stephen Porges. So what he says is that our bodies are more like radars, which constantly scan the environment around us and sense if there is any cues for safety or danger. And leaders, you like it or not, you are like that walking signal tower, constantly exhibiting signal. And what happens to the rest of them? We just saw that they are all, every body is like a scanning radar. Same, the team is scanning continuously and tuning in, not to the leader's words, but to the energy that they are exhibiting. If you're anxious one day, they are going to shut down. If you're going to be grounded as a leader, your team is going to breathe easier. When you're emotionally unresolved, it also starts reflecting on your team. And this is what I call the residue ripple. The residue that the leader has, it starts rippling into the team that you all hold. So, what are we talking here? Your internal state of mind shapes the tone and how you exhibit your energy. And that in turn shapes the nervous system of your team. Because remember, they are the radars who are constantly scanning for signals. And when they are shaped in their nervous system, the next thing is that it shapes the team behavior. And that is nothing but the culture of the whole team. So over time, the ripples become culture. So that's why I say that you may leave the room as a leader, but the energy that you had carried doesn't leave. That lingering tension after that tough meeting, that's not just people processing information. That's their bodies responding to how safe or how unsafe they're felt in your presence. And you know what is the scary part of all of this? Most of this happens unconsciously. And if we don't clear our emotional residue, we simply keep passing it on to our team, and it is going to shape their nervous system, and that is going to shape the culture. And we all know how culture is important in organizations. So now let's move on to the next segment, and I'll introduce a model that explains this ripple effect in a more powerful way. So I would like to call this model the residue ripple model, the unconscious karma, how it starts rippling. And how, as leaders, the more we suppress, the more suppressed emotions that we are going to leave to the system, the more we are aware, the better aligned as a team that we have and better culture that we can be bringing into the team. So now let's map them out as to what has been happening all the while. I want to introduce a model. The model's name is residue ripple model. Now you can visualize it like concentric circles. And this concentric circle has exactly captured how a leader's unprocessed emotion becomes operating system for the entire team. All right. Now let's picture a set of concentric circles. Now at the Middle, at the center, is you, the leader, the way your mood is, your stress, your internal stories, right? So, all of that is nothing but your unprocessed emotions, which is the core of our residue model. So, now what do we know about unprocessed emotions? Let's say you're feeling threatened by your upper management. You have not even named it. But what happens is that when you are threatened by your upper management, you start thinking that you need to start over controlling your team, double checking, micromanaging your decisions so that you will be able to cater to the threatening upper management. You don't know what it is, but it is just the chain of signals and reactions which happens, right? So that is your unprocessed emotion. So the next layer of your concentric circle is your invisible signals. So now you feel threatened by your higher management. What happens is that even without realizing, you start using clip tones, your posture tightens, your replies are shorter in meetings, you want to micromanage, you want to take decisions, which is very hard on the team. It is okay because you have a higher management who are constantly threatening you, right? So all of this subtle shifts, why do I call it subtle shifts, is that you don't know that you're doing such things, right? All that you know is that your management is threatening you. So these subtle shifts gets picked up by your team's nervous system. Now let's move on and understand the next concentric circle, which is the altered team behaviors. So what happens? Your members are sitting around you and looking at the posture, the kind of replies that you're making, and then they start second guessing themselves. They delay decisions, they avoid risks, they go quiet in meetings, they bring the safest ideas and they don't want to bring boldest ideas. They no longer are collaborating. They just want to go into a shell by giving bare minimum of what you're requiring because they don't feel safe around you. And next, the next larger circle, which is the cultural norms. So, what happens is that this, whatever I've explained so far, might have happened in a meeting. What happens over time? This becomes a norm. And team that used to be very bold ones and creative ones now becomes extra cautious, more hierarchical, more disconnected. And nobody wants any change. Nobody wants to voice out their ideas. They just want to go with the flow and not be caught. They just want to be safe. So, and why do they want to be safe? Because they are not safe in the environment. So, their mind is automatically taking a role where they want to feel safe because survival is a basic instinct of human beings, right? So, when you put humans in an unsafe environment, what happens? They want to shift to a safe place, which is the survival for them. And that's the ultimate that any humans would want. And that's the signs that we are watching. So now there's this fifth circle, which is the largest and the last circle of your concentric circles. So that I would like to call it as business outcome because all of us at organizations are working on certain outcomes, right? So eventually, when you have seen your team member, you internally, and then how you give the signals, and then how your team reacts, and then the cultural norms, and now we are talking about business outcomes. Eventually, from each of the concentric circles, it gets shown up in your business outcomes. It shows up in missed opportunities, poor innovation, slow delivery, and even attrition. You didn't say anything wrong, did you? You came with polished words in your meeting. But what really happened? People can sense the suppressed emotions that you had. And this is how unconscious karma spreads. It doesn't explode, but it gradually leaks. And when it leaks, it starts creating ripples. And then it becomes a cultural norm and it starts showing in your business outcomes. Now, the most dangerous thing in your leadership may not be what you say, but what you suppress. So start looking at what you suppress. And here's the catch. Most leadership models don't account for this. They measure what you do, what kind of projects you've won, what kind of deliveries that you have made, what kind of revenues that you have brought in. But they don't simply measure what energy that you bring into the team that makes them feel safe. So let's understand that leadership isn't all about action. It is about the atmosphere that you create for your teams to succeed. Because on a longer term, when you build a safer team, is when you can see the success on the business world as well. And in this model, every unresolved emotion, every bit of residue becomes a message, a memo straight sent to your team's nervous system, not through words, but truly in your energy. And all of this ripple that we're talking about starts with you. And how do we stop it? The only way to stop the negative spread is to clear your residue. Now, how do we go about it? That's something that we will learn in the next segment. Now, let's go deeper for a moment, right? Because emotional residue, again, isn't a metaphor, it is purely science, purely biology. And I would like to call this biology the high performing biology. First, I would like to talk about the Jungian shadow philosophy, psychology. And it was all put by Carl Jung. And what he said was that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life. And end of the day, you will call it a fate. In leadership, it sounds like that, right? After a tough meeting, we said that I don't know why I snapped. I just don't trust her. Something is off about her energy. Unconscious reactions, old emotional wounds coming up. You get triggered for some reason in the meeting that you're not even aware. You're like, I got triggered for some reason. Has this happened to you earlier? And this is what we call the shadow. The parts of ourselves we suppress, our fears, our biases, our unhealed triggers, they don't just disappear from your life. They are the ones who are sitting right inside you, driving your very decisions, your tone, the way you give feedback, your hiring mechanism. How many of us choose to have male colleagues? Why not female colleagues? I've heard this a lot. When they hire, they ask for the relationship status of a woman. Why? Because all of these are the biases, fears, childhood wounds. How did you look at your past experiences? How did you process the stories, the politics that you have come through, the failures you have come through? And all of this is sitting right inside you, driving your decisions, the way you operate as a leader. We don't lead from our polished LinkedIn profile. We lead from all that unresolved emotional baggage, the residue that we all have it inside. Unless we bring awareness to it, we will continue to ripple bad energy into the system, into your teams. Now, I would also like to touch upon a second science that I would like to bring it to you. It is called epigenetics, and it is slowly catching up. So, what the researchers have found out is that trauma changes the gene expression. So, there was a study which was done by a few researchers. What they did was they conditioned a mouse to fear a scent. When they continue to condition the mouse for the fear of the scent, what happened is that the next generation of that mouse feared that scent too. And you know why? Because it is how the genetics expression has been modified in that mouse, and then the next generation has inherited it. And when I heard this for the first time, I was fascinated to hear it. The second generation mouse did not even experience that scent. But what it experienced is that trauma which was there in its DNA. So now, how does this science of epigenetics, what is it doing to leadership? We don't just inherit all of that skin color and eye color and how our hair is. It doesn't, we don't only inherit them, we also inherit the emotional defaults, the distrust that we have on people, the urgency, the way we emotionally shut down. And in organizations, this becomes a culture. And what it is from one person called the leader. And this is like from generations to generations, this gets passed on. One generation's unprocessed pressure or trigger becomes the next generation's operating system. So, how more aware we should all be, right, to break that cycle of trauma. Now, here's a third layer that I wanted to introduce, the science called as systems theory. So, in this was put together by Edwin Friedman, and he says teams are like that emotional ecosystems. If a leader is anxious or even if he's avoidant, teams just not notice them, but they start adapting it. The system adjusts around the leader's emotional state. It's like placing a loud ticking clock in a quiet room. Even if no one says anything, everyone starts working around that sound, right? The ticking sound of the clock in a quiet room. In leadership, your unspoken energy becomes that emotional architecture of that entire team, because they are not hearing them, they are feeling them, and it is more powerful. Your stress isn't just your stress. What what is your stress becomes the organizational culture. And let us all understand that you walk into the room, you just don't walk with your body, you walk with your energy. And energy is the first thing that walks in and stays after, even after you leave the room. Now, with all of that, the science that we have had, now let's look at how the real life karma transfer happens, right? Let's bring this down to today's reality. You don't need a dramatic breakdown or emotional residue to form. These all happen during the micro moments of of your office meetings, the hallway conversations that you're doing. You send a passive aggressive email, you didn't yell, you didn't use loud or aggressive words, you didn't even use a bold font, you didn't use that reds there, you just wrote, as I already mentioned. Now guess what, your team is already walking on eggshells, as I already mentioned. Now, what happens is that they are second guessing themselves. Did I write the right email? Why did my leader write, as I already mentioned? When did he mention? Did I just forget? Next time, let me be extra caution. And this extra caution makes them go silent. Next time, they're not extra caution. The next time, they're not writing an email. And that's tension that you're building. And that's the residue that we're talking today. Now, another example that I want to give is to for you to picture a meeting. Someone brings up a concern, and then all of a sudden you go emotionally cold. You're not speaking. You just gave a long pause, and then one word reply. Yeah, noted. What happens? The room shuts down, and the next time that person doesn't speak up at all. And over time, the whole team learns this, and everybody goes silence. And that's the fear culture being born. It's a micro moment that you bring to the table as a leader. Now, imagine a leader who deflects a blame, who can't handle a blame. Project slips, It's quite something that we all go through our career. What if a manager throws their team under the bus in front of a senior management? The message, your words might be very simple, but your message is very loud and clear that you are not safe with me. And people, when there are two sides, integrity or survival, obviously survival is what the team will choose. And what happens? Ownership dies in the team. And people protect themselves instead of getting onto their mission of saving the project. They start saving themselves. These are nothing but the karma transfers. And you don't, as a leader, has to scream loud to scar people. And that's where energy is louder than the volume of your voice. And it works both ways, right? If you're calm and grounded, so is your team. If you carry a lot of emotional baggage, that's how your team would feel also. And we all should understand that as leaders, we are that walking signal tower, constantly emitting signals, whether you like it or not. So when you know this is unconsciously happening, why don't we make it into a conscious decision? So the next time you are in a meeting, an email thread, or a hallway conversation, ask yourself, what is the emotional inheritance that I'm passing down to people? Now, I would like all of us to think of how cultures are formed when we know that the residues and the ripples are happening. We often think of cultures as something that is written on the slide deck, something that's put on the walls of your pantries and your cubicles. And you have nice words like integrity, ownership, innovation, strategy. But culture doesn't exist on what you write on the walls. Culture exists in how you're emotionally safe with the leader. It is how your team feels when nobody is watching. They start small. Remember the micro moments we spoke about? Likewise, the culture starts small as emotional micro patterns and later scale bigger, and that becomes the norm. Let's say you have one leader who's constantly anxious. They don't shout, but they just hover over. They review every deck for 10 minutes. They send messages to you midnight. They obsess over every small things that goes wrong. Now, what happens to the team? The team will internalize the anxiety of the leader. So what happens? They start double checking their emails before sending. They start overworking. They start second guessing before they start talking in the meetings. And before you know it, your entire team is stuck in rework loops. And this rework loops is going to give them a burnout where people are going to stop proposing the boldest ideas to you and burnout gets normalized. And that's not just a behavior, right? That's the emotional residue becoming a whole organization culture. And the question is, does it stop there? No, it doesn't certainly stop there. The team that tiptoes around the conflict, they don't challenge each other. You may think that for today, your projects are going well, they are delivering on time. It all looks good on the paper. But on the floor, people don't speak up. Innovation doesn't necessarily thrive in fear because creativity requires emotional risk. And the residue suppresses that risk taking energy because they're not safe. And here's the truth: your culture is not what you say, it is the emotional patterns that you allow to happen. And over time, it scales really large. Now, how do we take control of all of this? So let me ask you something. Have you ever walked into a meeting and instantly sensed the tension, even before that very first word was spoken? That is coincidence or coming out of the residue. And leaders, we either carry it or we clear it. And this is where I would like to introduce another framework called as the karma cleanse. This will be your weekly or non negotiable ritual for clearing your inner leadership space before you start influencing anybody else. Because we saw that in micro moments is how we are influencing our team consistently. So let me walk you through 5 steps. And this stands for the acronym KARMA, KARMA. So let's start with K. K, know your trigger. Pause and ask yourself, what's off in my energy right now? Because we just saw, right, leaders, something goes really blows out of proportion. They just go on and on in that negative energy. They come out, and then when they sit finally to process, they say, hey, I don't know why I snapped at that. And that is precisely why we need to know what is the trigger. Is it irritation? Is it insecurity? Is it fatigue? You don't like being asked questions? What exactly is that? Maybe it may not be even from today. Maybe it is a leftover from a previous meeting. So, the question that we have to ask is every time you feel negative and you get off the track, ask yourself, what is the trigger that made me feel this way? Because self awareness is step zero. Because you can't even clean the energy if you can't name the energy. So, first step is to know your trigger. The second framework step is A, karma, K A. A stands for acknowledge the story. Because behind every emotional residue is a mental loop that keeps going on. You sit and think, they don't respect my time. I'm always being sidelined. There's too many politics which is happening in the office, and I'm not born to do politics. Why I always have to fix everything as a leader? So these are certain emotional residue which goes on in a mental loop in your mind. Does this sound familiar at all? As a leader, we have certain stories that we keep telling ourselves. The story may not be true, but if it keeps running on repeat in your mind, what happens is that it is showing how you show up as a leader. Now, when you're aware of the line that constantly goes on in your mind, don't judge it. Keep observing what is happening inside your mind. Because seeing the story loosens the grip of the story so that you're more self-aware of why is this happening. Now let's move on to the third step of the karma cleanse framework. It's KAR, karma. R stands for reflect on the source. It's very important to go back to the source. Now you start digging deeper. Where did the story come from? Why do I feel that nobody respects me? Some people are sidelining me. I There's a lot of politics and I cannot play politics. Where did the story begin? Was it a boss who has micromanaged you someday? Was it a moment when you weren't heard as a child? Is it an old pattern of proving your worth? This is where your shadow work meets leadership. You start connecting the dots between your inner child experience and the executive title that you hold. And this gives a great deal of understanding about why are you behaving how you're behaving right now. It might be stemming from age old experience that you might be having. Now let's move on to the next step of the framework, which is M for move the emotion. Now here's the thing, emotions are the energy in motion. To release such energy, you must move them. Now, how do you move the emotion? Now you know what has caused you the trigger. Now you know what is that story that you constantly run in your mind. You also know the source it has come from. The next step is to get it out. Pick your ritual. You can be doing a journaling, you can do 5 minutes of breath work, you can take a quick walk, or you can even check in with your friend or a trusted peer or a coach that you're constantly in touch with. The goal is very simple. When you know, don't suppress it. It's to process that emotion more, to let that energy pass through so that it does not leak into your decisions, the way you speak, or even into your team. So that is the whole motive. So now that we know what has caused you the trigger, what is the story, and what is the source of the story, start processing and get it cleaned out. And all you can do is to journal, you can check in with your trusted peer or your friend, take a quick walk, or even doing a 5 minutes of breath work. It will clean your energy. Now, the final one of the karma cleanse is align your energy. Now, ask yourselves, what is the emotion that I will have to carry today? What kind of leader that I will shape from today onwards? Because I am not going to be the person who had that childhood trauma earlier. I'm going to reset my leadership energy into calm, curiosity, clarity, groundedness, courage. So, this is your moment to re enter a new leadership energy. And this is an alignment that you bring between your leadership with your team. Because we all know that we leak our energy. When you clean your energy, you start leaking the clean energy, which is good. So after we saw this karma cleanse, make it a weekly practice. Block 15 minutes, probably every Friday, label it karma cleanse and sit and work on your karma. Look at what are the patterns that you're carrying into your leadership. What are the biases that keeps on showing up every day? Go back to the decisions that you have made and ask yourself, why have you made a decision that you've made? This is not somebody who is going to tell you that you are leaking bad energy. This is you being a self responsible leader, and constantly cleansing your energy is very important. So now you can start doing from today onwards a weekly ritual, block your calendar. It's more like that performance review that you do with your emotional safety that you bring as a leader. And every time before you enter the meeting room, take 5 minutes to clear the baggage that doesn't belong to your team. Because we all are kings and queens of carrying the old energy, the energy that happened 3 weeks back. We still carry that energy into a meeting room that will happen today. And if you're brave, bring this into your team rituals. Start with check ins, with a moment of emotional clarity before you can start diving into your strategies and number. Because the best cultures aren't built on data, they are built on clean energy. Now, how do we apply all of this in action, right? The karma cleanse into action. I would like to bring this into the idea of your life. I would give you a few scenarios. Now let's take the first scenario, which is giving feedback. You're about to give a constructive feedback, but you're still holding that tension from the previous conversation. Now, imagine if you don't cleanse your energy, what you will do, you will start leaking the tension from your previous conversation. So, that is when I want you to pause and do a karma cleanse. Know to yourself that the trigger that happened in the previous conversation, acknowledge the story that you're carrying with yourself. And more importantly, align. Align and say that what kind of a leader that you have to bring to the table today. Do you want to be the leader that holds tension from the previous conversation, or you want to bring clarity and calm today? Now, that feedback becomes your leadership moment, not a leak of your emotional residue. You see how shifting the conversation can be? Now, let's say I'd like to introduce another scenario. Let's say you are in a heated team meeting. The tension is rising. You feel the urge to control the room or even shut down as a leader. Now, instead of reacting, you breathe, calm down. You remember this is the residue and this is not your leadership reality. Quickly name the emotion. Hold space for yourself to realign your energy. And that one moment of emotional awareness can will not just reset your leadership, will definitely reset the room as well. Now, let's say you're in a big decision making situation. You're deciding whether to cancel a project and you really have that urge to cancel the project. You're frustrated, you're burnt out. Now, instead of going ahead and deciding and canceling the project, I would say take a pause, apply your karma cleanse again, journal it out. The important question in this scenario that you'll have to ask yourself is, am I choosing to cancel the project from fatigue or from strategy? And that's what residue free leadership looks like. And it's not a perfect leadership, but it is a very intentional leadership, a very conscious leadership. And that to me is power. Now, the real question is, how are we going to start leading after we have seen the science and the unconscious baggages that each of us are carrying? I had walked into meetings with a lot of residue, with a lot of emotional baggage, and I've seen how my teams were responding to it. After I got into all of this, I now walk into the meeting thinking, what is that energy that I would like to walk with? And what is the clean leadership energy that I would like to carry into my team? That's the thing about unconscious karma. It doesn't need your permission to act, it just needs your awareness, and you can see a complete shift that you can see happen. I train leaders to master communication, to set goals, to build strategies. But we often forget that one thing that shows up constantly everywhere, whether you like it or not. It is your energy. It leaks in your emails. It leaks even when you're very silent. It leaks how you show up for your team. And here's the call for all of us. Before your next leadership meeting, before your next decision, before your next one on one conversation, take a moment to do your karma cleanse and clear what doesn't belong to your team. Because you don't need more frameworks into it. All you need is simple awareness. Unconscious karma is always at work. The question is, will you lead from the unconscious karma or you will clear the unconscious karma and make it the conscious karma? Because in leadership, your legacy isn't just what you build, it is about how energetically you leave behind. And the choice is in all of us. Thank you. Any
Awesome, Kavina.
questions?
Very
Thank you,
interesting.
Shabana. Thank you, Shabana.
Yeah. Rajvin, Premji, you want to share? Yeah, Premji wants to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just very interesting. Whereby we talked about suppressed feelings and how to I have been there, done that, and it's not a nice feeling. And I had a very good conference on the 24th to 27th July.
Mm-hmm.
And laughter yoga taught me how to accept what is, what was, and what will. But sometimes I am going for my hypnotherapy appointment just to help myself process the information, process the emotions, that process grief. I lost a friend. I lost a very good laughter buddy I was in the conference, and few days later he passed away due to illness.
Sorry.
So a lot of things, happiness, more happy thoughts over sadness, that can I can process the happy thoughts, but I cannot process the negative emotions, because laughter yoga is not about negativity, and it happens in every communication. There is every misunderstanding. So laughter yoga cuts down the misunderstanding, and it's fine, and I have learned to, but just that the process of the negative emotions, I need help from hypnotherapists. So and the suppression of feelings, as you mentioned, is the speaker yesterday also. She was also talking that suppression is not good, and I would agree also that suppression could be the cause of many illnesses, many cysts, many unresolved conflict. I mean, like, why do we have to suppress our feelings when we try to talk to people? People don't understand. Our parents are gem of people. Our parents brought siblings for reasons to this world. Siblings are first biological friends, but they are busy in their world, so you remain de- attached, but detached, attached but not so attached. Then you are peaceful. So yeah, laughter yoga has made me not to suppress feelings. And thank you so much for thank you so much for the topic today.
Thank you for reflecting, Rajvin. Really appreciate your reflections.
Premji, you wanted to share?
Hi, namaste. I was very late in joining and caught up in the last moment, and I connected the dots. Thank you very much. I see that where I can improve certain leadership issues which I myself have. Because lately I've been seeing that there's a certain kind of unsureness on my part when I'm dealing with unfamiliar territory, like grappling with the whether I'm doing the right thing or not, whether am I carrying old programs into the given scenario. But thank you for this wonderful sharing, because it puts things in perspective for me. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your reflections with us. Thanks for joining in. Shabana, over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kavina. You covered it all the points so beautifully, from starting from where the problem is to resolving it. So it was very helpful. So thank you so much. And I
Thank
think
you very much.
I wrap it up. It's close to 9.